Hey folks, Yaku Cosmopolitan here. Let's talk about Samurai Japan's updated 30-man roster for the 2026 World Baseball Classic. I made a video back in late January when the roster was first announced as to how they might look for the tournament, but we have a few player changes since then. Also the news of the designated pitcher pool and that Shohei Ohtani will not be on two-way duties for the WBC. He's not going to be pitching. He's DH only, which does kind of change the complexion of the rotation. But the main guys that we had projected before are still the same. It's Yoshinobu Yamamoto as the 1, Yusei Kikuchi as the 2, Tomoyuki Sugano as the 3, Hiromi Ito as the 4. I think that is not exactly cemented, but I think you can definitely expect to see that in pool play. One interesting note is that Tatsuya Imai is on the designated pitcher pool, and obviously, he's going to be in camp already with the Astros. If he wants to pitch in relief for Miami, it's a possibility that they add him for the roster. Now, Japan in the past has not really liked the idea of having a MLB player join midway through the tournament. They like to stick with the guys that they've had from the beginning of camp, but in the case of an emergency, I could definitely see that happening. Obviously, as I said before, this rotation is not necessarily the best Japan could offer. There's no Shunpeita Yamashita, there's no Roki Sasaki, and obviously no Imai, at least, in his fullest capacity. So more than likely, we have Yamamoto in the opener against Chinese Taipei, and then it's Yusei Kikuchi against Korea, and then Tomoyuki Sugano against Australia, and then finally Ito against Czech Republic. So I think that's fine. Obviously, when you look at roster breakdowns, a lot of people think Korea is the best team after Japan in this pool. I think it's probably Chinese Taipei. Now, offensively, that's debatable. I think Korea is honestly a little bit better than Chinese Taipei in the lineup. But when it comes to how, weak Korea's pitching depth is, Japan should likely have an easier time in that game than against Chinese Taipei, where if they are throwing out a Roshishu or a Ruyang Lin, the Japanese offense might actually struggle to put runs on the board, and that might be a tight game. So I don't mind having Yamamoto as the 1 in that sense. And obviously, it would give him the extra rest day necessary after he pitches the opener to get back out there for the quarterfinal, which is not going to be a walk in the park by any stretch of the imagination. Last time they got to play at home, they played a slightly weaker opponent in Italy. This time they are going to get one of the powerhouses like a Venezuela. So it's not going to be easy. And then if you get past that game, then at that point, semifinals and finals, I don't think you're even really thinking in terms of traditional starters at that point. You are doing more so of piggybacking, and maybe you do go with a Kikuchi as the opener, but then you're just throwing out all of these multi-inning follower types who are all starters at the MPB level. So Hiroya Miyagi, Ryuhei Sotani, Chihiro Sumida, Atsuki Taneichi, Hirojo Takahashi, Kogi Kitayama. Sumida is the new add here. He was brought in after the injury of Daichi Ishii, who was going to be more of that fireman, high leverage reliever. But Sumida is a guy that Ibata has put a lot of faith in. He's been there for almost all of their major competitions before under Ibata. He absolutely dominated at the Premier 12, 16 strikeouts in 8 innings. So I think he's earned this opportunity. And then the other change they made was with Shoma Fujihira coming in for Kaima Taira. He's just going to be a 1-inning reliever, but another guy who impressed at the Premier 12. He has a big fastball, and Ibata has obviously taken a liking to him. Still no Shinya Matsuyama. I'm not exactly sure why that is, but Matsuyama said that he was preparing for the WBC. It's not like there was an underlying injury or he wasn't interested. So that is a big question for me. He's not even on the designated pitcher pool. So again, I think they would be stronger if they had Matsuyama. But otherwise, you still have Taisei, Yuki Matsui, Yuki Matsumoto. You can definitely, solve that puzzle for the late innings, matchups based. Again, I've said in the past, like Taisei and Yuki Matsui are a really nice pairing because with Taisei, you have that lower arm slot from the right side, running fastball coming in with a splitter and kind of a sweeper off of that. Yuki Matsui, the high left-handed slot with the high vertical angle fastball. So I think the late innings are mostly going to be okay. It could be even better with the addition of a few other names. Kazuki Sugiyama, another guy in the designated pitcher pool who I would have definitely considered. I honestly thought he was the one coming in instead of Sumida, because now they have just, a plethora of these like potential long men, follower types, although Sumida is probably going to be more of a one-inning pitcher at this tournament. And also they have 5 lefties now in Kikuchi, Miyagi, Sotani, Sumida, and Matsui. That is a ton of southpaws, which, a lot of the teams in their pool, like Korea and Chinese Taipei, do have a lot of lefty hitters, so that makes sense. And then as you get into the knockout stages, maybe you do want to actually play a lot of matchups-based baseball, right, where Miyagi, I would traditionally associate him as someone who can come in and give you like 3-4 innings, but maybe you do just want to have him go after, a Bryce Harper in the lineup and then switch to somebody else. Obviously, you got the 3-batter minimum to work through as well. But one thing I will point out is that Ibata pretty much did not pick any pitcher that has a very limited pitch mix. That could be one of the reasons he didn't go for a Matsuyama. He's a 2-pitch guy. Sugiyama also a 2-pitch guy. Matsumoto, Fujihira are kind of in that vein as well, but he has gone for a lot of these starters that have obviously 3, 4, 5 pitches, probably, in the hopes that if necessary, you can throw them out for more than just an inning or so and actually keep them effective. So that's the pitching staff. Again, depending on if they add Imai in the knockout stages, I think it's going to be fine. This is still their strength. Like, even if they lost Taira and Ishii, the grand, scheme of things has not changed at all. This is still, to me, like a B+ pitching staff. Could have been a lot better, could be a lot worse. So they're going to be okay there. The infield situation hasn't changed at all. It's still going to be Seishiro Sakamoto and Kenya Wakatsuki as your 2 primary catchers, and then Yuhei Nakamura maybe, for defense/mentorship. First base and third base, I'm quite certain that it's going to be Murakami first and then Okamoto at third, just based on that's where they're going to be primarily playing in MLB in their debut seasons respectively. But we had Will Venable for the White Sox saying that Murakami is going to stay fresh at third. He was taking some grounders there. I don't think it's necessarily impossible that Murakami plays the hot corner for this tournament. Obviously, that's where he played in 2023. That's where he's played the majority of his MPB career. But to me, when you think of just defense, like Okamoto at this point is a much better defender at third than Murakami. And you want to get Murakami more comfortable at first base. So this is what I would go with. And then Shugomaki at second base. That part of the infield is basically locked in place. You have all these big-time sluggers, very reliable bats, and then Taisei Makihara can come off the bench. He obviously is primarily a second baseman in MPB, but he can play all over. He's been a center fielder in the past. He can play shortstop, third base, so he's like the super utility guy. Shortstop, we mentioned last time, it's a little bit of a unorthodox kind of approach that Ibata's going with Kaito Kozono, who's just not really a sure-handed shortstop defensively, but he won the batting title, so obviously you want him to kind of, lengthen the lineup with singles and keep the line moving, just be kind of a nuisance to opposing pitchers. And then Sosuke Genda, the veteran, mostly as a defensive backup, I think. Yuta Izuguchi would have been a pretty obvious pick here, but that's not what they decided to do. So, catching wise, I do think we'll see Wakatsuki for guys like Yamamoto, Sotani, Miyagi a lot. Obviously, pitchers that he has built a lot of rapport with over the years with Oryx. Sakamoto is overall, though, the better defender. He was, the SIS Fielding Bible winner at backstop last year. Excellent framer. calls a good game. Nakamura, I just don't really expect to see all that much unless there's like a lot of pinch hitting going on, in which case, obviously, if Sakamoto gets pinch hit for and then Wakatsuki comes out of the game, then Nakamura has to catch, basically. But he's mostly as an emergency. The outfield, though, is where things have really changed over the past few weeks, because when the roster was first announced, Masataka Yoshida wasn't there, but then they added him as the 30th man. I imagine that was always the plan, but there was probably some kind of, insurance or logistical issues to work out with Boston. But then otherwise, I kind of felt as though you had Seiya Suzuki and Yoshida locked into the corners to some extent, with center field being between Morishita and Shuto. But as it turns out, and shout out to Jordan from Cespedes Family BBQ for pointing this out to me the other day, that PCA for the Cubs in camp was talking about Seiya playing center in the WBC, and then we have more of these Japanese media outlets reporting on this as well in the coming days. So it appears as though Seiya Suzuki is getting reps in center field for this tournament. And we also had one of the coaches on Samurai Japan, Kamei, saying that Shota Morishita is not being regarded as a center fielder for the WBC. I mean, granted, he didn't play center field at all in MPB last year with Hanshin either, but he's younger and more athletic than Seiya. So I just thought, hey, if you're going to make one of these corner infield or corner outfield types rather, move to center, it would probably be Morishita. He got a few innings under his belt there in November for the exhibition tournament as well. So obviously Ibata was considering it to some extent, and it's a position he has played in the past back in 2023. So that's what I was figuring. I was like, okay, center field, you rostered Morishita. He was the cleanup hitter at the Premier 12. He's your guy. That's not going to be the case. Instead, it looks like they're leaning towards Seiya Suzuki in center field, where, mind you, he has, 2 or 3 career starts in MPB and MLB combined. He has been essentially a right fielder for his entire career. And then most recently in 2025, primarily a designated hitter. And then Yoshida, who is also primarily a designated hitter, would be in left. And I'm sorry, but that is a really bad defensive outfield. Now, a tournament like this, obviously, it's kind of like playing postseason baseball. It's like, is that going to get exposed? Not really. You could get lucky, not have any, difficult balls hit out there. But on the other hand, it could also be like the biggest play of the game. There's one hit, right between the gap in left and center, and then they can't get to it, and that can really change the entire trajectory of the game. So to me, that's a little bit unusual that they are actually going to be relying on Seiya in center. But by the sounds of it, he feels good right now, like compared to previous years entering spring, and he says that he's comfortable, giving center field a go. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, you do have Ukyo Shuto, who is, one of the fastest guys in the entire world and one of the best defenders in center field as a potential super backup slash, maybe he does get 1 or 2 starts out there, right? Like, I think it's totally plausible that they try Seiya Suzuki in center in camp. They're not really liking it, and then Shuto ends up being more of like the guy you trust to start the game, and then maybe you pinch hit for him later in the game. So you kind of flip that dynamic rather than having him be the defensive replacement slash pinch runner type. But then right field, it does still look like it's Kensuke Kondo. I, of course, am a big fan of Kensuke Kondo. He is the epitome of consistency. He was hitting in front of Otani at the last WBC, did an excellent job filling in for Seiya Suzuki at that point. And honestly, he's probably the best player in the world that's not currently on an MLB team. I don't expect him to ever go to the major leagues just because of his contract situation with SoftBank, but I mean, on-base machine and also a good defender. It's just like he's had these back issues over the years. He had surgery last year. He was forced to DH a lot down the stretch in 2025, so it is almost like you're playing 3 DHs in the outfield, which is kind of insane. But Kondo, when he's healthy, when he's moving well, he is a Gold Glove caliber corner outfielder. He's also a guy who has played center when he was a little bit younger, came up as a catcher, moved to third base. So Kondo is very athletic. I don't have any reservations about him in right field, where he did play a decent amount for SoftBank last year. It's just that, when you have Yoshida and Seiya Suzuki as your other guys, I would probably lean towards playing Shota Morishita or Ukyo Shuto a little bit more, just because they're going to need the extra range. Teruaki Sato, despite winning Central League MVP last year, 40 homers, obviously, in terms of guys who are left in MPD now that Murakami and Okamoto are gone, I think he's the best slugger in Japan. A guy who you might see in the majors in the not too distant future, but it's just very hard to find a spot for him because he primarily plays third in MPD. He could be like the super backup to a Murakami or an Okamoto. Maybe you give him one start if these guys need rest. But otherwise, he has experience in right field. He has a very good arm. He could just play right. Maybe that, again, these problems could solve itself in camp if, like, say, Kondo gets banged up again and he's not feeling 100%, then it's like, okay, then Sato is now your right fielder. But at this point, I feel like he is the one that is going to be tasked with being like the super pinch hitter. That's just what it feels like to me. If Yoshida is starting, if Seiya Suzuki is starting, if Kondo is starting, then Morishita and Sato are these two Tigers guys are the big bats off the bench who can also come in and play, defense if you need them to. Shuto, it just feels like to me, I think it would be fine to start him because you have so much offensive upside elsewhere in the lineup that it's okay to have and he's not a dud, he's not like a minus with the stick. Certainly in like the pool stage, he can hit and let his legs do the work. I'm just not confident that he can, do well against MLB pitching. But Genda and Shuto are kind of, and I guess Makihara as well, because he's very fast. Those are like your pinch runner / bench options. I think Ibata probably, if there wasn't like Yoshida, he would have considered Lars Nootbaar, also injured, Yuki Okabayashi, Ryota Isabata. These are guys that he's rostered in the past as like the center field defensive replacement / pinch runner. So to me, it does feel like center field is a glaring weakness for this team. Defensively, of course, in terms of getting, these big bats in the lineup, like these guys are going to match. Like Yoshida, Suzuki, Kondo are good, and I'm not really worried about the fact that Yoshida hasn't been that great in MLB over the past few years. He's had injuries in there. I think when he's right, he is still one of the best bat-to-ball guys in the sport. So I think they can hit, but it does worry me when these these premium positions are Japan's weakest spots. Shortstop with Kozono, center field with Seiya Suzuki. Those are just not guys that inspire a lot of confidence in me when it comes to the glove. Catcher, those guys aren't going to really hit much, but at least they're going to lock it down defensively. So those are the big concerns for Japan going into the tournament. Is you're probably going to get enough offense via Murakami, Maki, Okamoto, Seiya, Yoshida, Kondo, and then the bench guys, they have a very good lineup that is arguably, even a tier above 2023. But, if the starting pitching, and let's just say, a guy like Sugano is not necessarily racking up strikeouts at this point in his career, I think there are going to be balls in play. So that's going to potentially put some strain on the defense. But I will point out with Sugano that I actually don't really hate the Colorado landing spot now that I have had time to kind of review, what he can do there. And he has the splitter, obviously, which probably plays decently well at Coors. I think there's the discourse on Sugano has maybe gone a little bit too far, where everyone's saying he's completely washed and he's terrible. He's 36, get him off the team. I would have gone with somebody else as well. But if there's, others that are not available, like a Shumpeta or Roki Sasaki, then yeah, it makes sense to go with the veteran like Sugano. So it's going to be interesting, very interesting. Japan should still top this pool. Korea and Chinese Taipei are neck and neck kind of for the number 2 spot. I think Chinese Taipei is a little bit better. And then Australia, also kind of a dark horse. Czech Republic, obviously are going to be expected to finish in last, but maybe they can give Australia a competitive game. This is going to be a fun pool. Let's see what happens.